my little kitty Blackberry. She's so cute. Oh, isn't she cute? Oh, isn't she adorable? But hey everybody, how's it going? So today I want to answer a question that I keep getting in email and comments, which is, do you think now, given everything that's happening, this was the right time to move and choose to expand your business? And also, what I think the repair industry is going to look like in a post-coronavirus world. In order to answer this question properly, I have to really break down what goes through a business owner's mind when it is time to expand a business, or when they're in that crossroads where they're choosing what to do with their business, so that you can kind of understand what was going through my mind. Now, if you own a business, there are two different types of businesses. There are businesses where there is enough documented education, procedures, and so on and so forth that even if the owner plops over, the business will still run as intended. Maybe not perfectly, but it'll still get the job done. And then there are businesses where if 2 or 3 crucial people within the company plop over, there is no more business. This is because it is very, very difficult to take every single piece of information in your head, every single procedure, not just the procedures you have, but why you have those procedures, and explain them in a manner that is easy for a newcomer to comprehend and understand. It's very difficult. It's kind of like me asking you, name every single person you know, and you can't get any of them wrong. It's like, it's one thing to remember a couple of friends. It's really difficult to name every single person you know and not get any wrong. Doing that kind of brain dump, that control P, is difficult, and it's an uncomfortable transition for many business people, which is why you'll see that lots of businesses tend to remain small. It's something that Michael Gerber goes over in a couple of his books. And when people face this, they typically have two choices. Let's say there's been an influx of business for whatever reason, whether it's a news article, a story on primetime television, maybe your industry is in great demand, or whatever it is. There's usually a fork in the road. And behind door number 1, if you get a lot more business, you can work to expand capacity. You can write the manuals for the procedures and so on and so forth. You can hire more people to take on the increased business, and you could upgrade your system so that you can take on the increased business. And eventually, at some point, you can move to a new place that will allow you to continue to hire more people so that you can expand your business. Behind door number 2, you can decide, I want to stay small. I don't want to hire a bunch more people. I don't want to move to a new place. I don't want to have to figure out what the weak points are in all my systems as I up volume. I want to stay where I am. That's very difficult to do. So one of the things you could do is simply up your prices. And I know people that do this, that don't want to grow their business. They just say, okay, we're getting overwhelmed. Let's just cut down some of our business by upping our prices. Then we won't have to hire another 6 people. We can stay the same little 3-person company we are now, and nothing really changes. I chose the former approach, which is, as business ramped up, I kept pricing for the most part the same on most things that we did. As business continued to ramp up, the one major increase in prices I did is when I went from being a house call-based business that had virtually no overhead to being a store. But as a store, as business went up, the pricing for most things that we did kind of stayed the same, which meant that as influxes of business came in, the answer was to hire new people and to update our systems, whatever it is, whether it's a ticketing system, a shipping system, update our procedures so that it's easy to hire new people to do these jobs. Any position here should be very simple to hire someone for, or at the very least to educate them for. And it should also be eventually of business where we find a new place. And that is the path that I have chosen to take over the past 5 years. Now, I think that was, in the end of the day, the better path to take for the industry. If I took the path of, I'm getting more business, let me just up the prices so that I don't have to hire new people, and profitability is either the same or higher than it was before, then you get to a point where we could be perceived as ripoffs. And, lots of what we discuss here is that the only choice is often the authorized service provider, and the authorized service provider is ripping you off. It doesn't really make a good argument if we go down that road. There's also the possibility that if you do that, you alienate all the people that caused your business to have a surge in customers to begin with. So if you have a surge in customers because you have affordable prices, and then you keep upping and upping and upping prices to suppress business, at some point you are going to suppress your business to the point where you have less business than you ever did, and now your business just kind of implodes. And this is also something that Michael Gerber talks about in his books, where if you have that point where you're ready to launch off and you choose to stay small, eventually these businesses implode. And I believe that one of the ways they do that is by continuously upping their prices so that the demand stays steady, but then that demand doesn't stay steady. As anybody who's been a freelancer, runs their business, knows, business never does this. It does this. And if you do something to try to make it do this a little bit to counteract that, it's very hard to come back from that. If I were smart, I would have chosen to do this move at the end of 2018. That was after the CBC News piece came out. That was when my YouTube channel went from about 700,000 views a month to 4 million views a month. That is when the right to repair lobbying work that I was doing was starting to actually get viewed by other people that were aware that there was an industry of people that could fix these devices. So the industry grew. And above all, that's when my building mysteriously went on fire, which flooded my entire basement. If I were in my right mind, which I kind of was because I got a concussion at the time, what I would have done was start looking for a place in October of 2018. That's what I would have done. I was buried under work. I thought I could continue to make that place work. I thought it would be impossible to find anything else. And that would have likely been the best time to move. If there was any sort of shock to the system financially, that shock to the system would have been at a time when business was booming rather than at a time where people are afraid if they go outside that they're going to die. So that, that when people think if they go outside they're going to die, that tends to not be the best time to be a retail storefront. I still stand behind the choice that I made, which is don't implode as a business. And I also still hold the belief that if I stayed in that hallway with 14 people, that would have worked out poorly in the long term, because in the long term, the fact that anything got done out of that place is a miracle. One thing Eli, the computer guy, keeps mentioning is that he's very surprised, and he holds the one thing that he will ever hold me in high regard for is that the people that work for me did not kill each other, 14 of them working in a hallway. And yet, I think we produced miracles out of that hallway. Steve's Pure Air VLF 48 clean room sink was literally right in front of a pile of smelly, disgusting garbage behind him because there was nowhere else to put the garbage. The fact that we fit anything into that place was an absolute and utter miracle. And it was, it was a miracle that it was ever running. It wasn't normal that it was running and every now and then it got busy. It was a miracle that place ran at all. And I really did push my luck with using it for as long as I did. Now, obviously I realized that there was an economic bubble. I mentioned it. Alan also mentioned it in a video that I had mentioned this with regards to finding a new space. I said, listen, I may postpone my search because I think prices will plummet. And I realized that there was an economic bubble. This is one of the reasons that I was not willing to pay these ridiculous inflated rates for spaces. 90 a square foot, 100 a square foot, 120 a square foot. That's ridiculous. I paid $68 for my space back in 2011. And frankly, I wasn't willing to spend a dime more than that now. The space that I got was $66 a square foot, which I think is an excellent, excellent deal. And the reason I wasn't looking to spend more than that is because I realized that the reason all these places are empty is because you're basing your real estate prices on a bubble that is going to pop. And as I've said in prior videos, I believe that the coronavirus is simply what's popping the bubble. The bubble was already there. It's been inflated for like 12 years. This is simply what is going to pop it. I realized there was a bubble. And realizing there was a bubble, I chose to move anyway because this is not like some crazy new expansion. This is something that I should have done 2 years ago. The fact that any work got done at that old place was indeed a miracle. And if any of you have seen it, it is much smaller in person than it is in the videos. That being said, I would have never predicted a global pandemic that shuts down major supply chains, where people are quarantined, being told to stay at home, businesses are being forced to close, people are being forced to stay in place, people that could have been potential customers not only have no interest in spending money to fix their extra devices, they're also worried about whether they will have a job or money for healthcare or whether their healthcare provider will actually be able to help them when they get the virus. Yes, clearly bad timing. Not something that I would have predicted. Now, there is something that I think that is positive that can come out of all of this. I'm not saying that this is a positive situation, to be clear, before someone tries to copy pasta, take me out of context there. The one thing that I think that comes out of this that is positive is for the people who are at the bottom of the barrel. So there are three different classes of business here. I think that there are the large businesses, the ones in the tens to hundreds of millions of dollars kind of businesses. You've got medium-sized businesses, and then you have the cockroaches. So, for example, I'm not saying that as an insult. I'm saying it as a technical term here. So, in 2008, that's when I started my business. And at the time, I would have classified myself as a cockroach, in the sense that not only was my business as small as could be, but also the fact that it was as small as can be provided it resiliency during one of the worst financial recessions in history. And when I say cockroach as a technical term, there's that whole concept that the cockroach is is more likely to survive a nuclear war than we are. They're small enough that the radiation's not going to mess with. I don't know the exact science behind it. I'm not an entomologist, but the whole concept that the radiation, they're strong enough for their size that they don't have to worry about it the same way that we do. I'm not saying that you can't step on a cockroach, because if you step on a cockroach, you kill it. But if humans were the size of a cockroach, we would not be as resilient as the cockroach. They're small, they're not seen as strong, but they're very resilient. And I think in times like this is one of the times where the smaller businesses are actually more resilient than the medium-sized ones. So if you are where I was 12 years ago, if you're working out of your apartment, if you have $268 to your name, if you're dead broke and have a shitty apartment, as much as it sucks to be you, your only overhead is going to be that shitty apartment. And there's a several-month moratorium on evictions, and even once that is done, you can probably put off paying everything you owe for those months for quite some time. You don't have employees. You don't have insurance. You don't have a bunch of random bills that come with being a, quote, real business. So you're going to be able to weather a storm a little bit better than a medium-sized business. A large business, a very large company, is going to be able to weather that storm, whether because they have money in reserves, whether it's because it's easier for them to get a loan or a bailout package of some sort. They'll be able to weather that storm and get through it. Medium-sized businesses are the ones that have that combination of not enough money in reserve to weather a storm, but way too many expenses to be able to weather a storm at the same time. And they're also going to be less likely to be able to get loans than large businesses. So one of the things I mentioned in a video that I did back in around September or October was that I always declined a loan. I have never carried a balance on my business credit card. I have never had to figure out what my APR even is, because it just doesn't get used. My business credit card is paid in full every single month. I have never had my business bank account go negative. I pay somewhere in the 20 to 40% range above industry standard wages in the area for any of the particular positions at my company. It's not like my business is profitable only because everybody here is getting paid in ramen and Amtech flux. I have a substantial set of expenses already, and the business is profitable after paying all the employees and myself. I was very surprised to hear that I did not qualify for a loan. But one of the things that set off him is that loans are typically for the people that don't really need them. You're able to get a loan when you don't actually need it. And I'm not saying that I have the best balance sheet in the world by any means. What I'm saying is that if I can't get a loan after the amount of time I've been in business, after the notoriety that my business has, after the ratings that it has on every single site, after again, not a millionaire, but my balance sheet is not that of someone that has a 400 credit score that never pays their bills. I was very, very surprised at that. If I can't get a loan, I imagine a lot of other medium-sized businesses are in the exact same boat. So if we're put into a situation where we're forced to not do business for a certain period of time, but we still have to pay our bills for that period of time, the cockroach business, the me of 12 years ago, their life kind of sucks, but they're not destroyed. The large company, they have money in reserve because they're a large company. And even if they don't have that money in reserve, the larger company is going to be more able to get a line of credit or tap a line of credit or a loan because they have more assets to use as collateral than the medium-sized business. My battery just died. Give me 1 second while I replace it. Hey, the battery in my camcorder just died. I know you can get a DC adapter, but Sony wants $87 for the DC adapter to a Sony A5100, which just as a matter of principle, I can't give them because it's a fucking DC adapter for a camera that uses less than 1 amp of power. And the knockoff one doesn't fit properly, so you have to jiggle it all the time or it doesn't work. Anyway, it's a good thing I had to get up because now you can see my little kitty Blackberry. She's so cute. Oh, isn't she cute? Oh, isn't she adorable? But yeah, so the larger company is going to be able to weather the storm because they will be able to get a loan easier or they have more in the bank. The small company, the one-man band, the cockroach, as I was 8 years ago, can weather the storm because they have a very low amount of expenses. But if forced to close, if in a position where there are less customers coming through, if the government says that your business has to close while simultaneously paying your staff members 66 to 100% of what they would have made if they showed up to work for that time period, that means that you're now on the hook for $34,000, $60,000, $100,000 of wages that you don't have in the bank while you have no income. You see how this is going to kind of hollow out the repair industry, if not a lot of small business in general. And this is why I think that what is likely going to happen in the after this is all done is that you will see there's going to be a large crater where there used to be a lot of mid-sized repair shops. Now, you may think that this means that there is only going to be nothing but large corporations involved in repair. You have seen that kind of corporate influence in repair over the past several years. There are companies like, I think CPR has been eating up a lot of the smaller independents. So there are shops that I used to know by name, and now they have CPR signs. I talked about this in a video regarding the iPhone battery. I had heard a rumor last year, just a rumor, but from someone I trust, that speaks to people involved with the company, that they were looking to be able to get access to a lot of the same parts, tools, diagrams, and stuff that I'm looking to get access to for every independent repair shop via right to repair legislation, but like for themselves. So they could kind of make the argument to the sales pitch that, hey, listen, you can continue going on your own with your own brand name, but like, man, would be a real shame if you weren't able to like replace iPhone batteries or screens a year or two from now. Hey, we're only asking for this percentage of your income every year. Just got to change your logo. I'm not exactly excited by that. You know, I'm not excited by that. I don't see a lot of innovation. I mean, real innovation. I'm not tech bullshit coming out of larger franchises or chains. You know, I see the Mark Schaefer's, the Tim Hermans, the Dukes from the Netherlands, the Jessa Joneses. These are the people that are figuring out fixes that nobody else knew about until they started talking about them. Not someone from like iFix and Repair or Ubreak iFix or CPR. So I will mourn the loss of mid-sized businesses. And when it comes to these companies, again, I'm not excited at the prospect of giving 6 to 10% or whatever of profit to some executive that has never soldered a jumper under an SMC in their life to stay in business. But I think you're going to see more of those companies survive rather than mid-size. Now, the small players may think, well, I guess we're just out. We're screwed. But one of the great things about large companies, if you're a small company, is that large companies are very rarely able to offer the level of personalized service and support, nor are they as agile as small companies. They're typically rigid. They need to play by a rule book, a set of procedures that is often very rigid so that their company can operate regardless of the area they're in, regardless of who they hire. They need to be able to pick up someone off the street and in a certain amount of time give them a rule book and this is how to run the business. It's very cookie cutter. It means that they're not going to be able to offer the same level of personalized solutions that a small company, or the cockroach as I called it, would be able to offer, which gives you a competitive edge even if you have no money. And that's where I found myself at the end of 2008. And I think that's part of the reason that I was successful, is that I had started during that business recession where a lot of the mid-sized companies were not in the game. The larger companies that were in the game just kind of sucked at it. They didn't really have they weren't agile. They weren't able to satisfy consumer demands. They were just kind of put together in a very cookie cutter way. And I was able to come by and eat their lunch. And I think that the one good thing that may come out of of what's going on right now with the economy with regards to the repair business is that there's going to be a lot of space for new entrepreneurs that want to enter the field that don't have any money in their pocket. And this is where not having any money in your pocket, but also not having huge expenses is actually a plus. Because someone who has $60,000 but $100,000 in expenses is actually way worse off than someone who has $600 and $800 in expenses. You may think, I'm broke, I'm fucked, I have $600 and $800 in expenses. Crap. And maybe you are. I've been in that place before, and I've been in many places worse than that. But the reality is that it's in the middle of something like this. It may actually be easier for you to get out of your situation where you have 600 and you need 8 than someone who has 60,000 but needs 100. And all you're going to see is, wow, that person has a business that looks like it's 100 times bigger than me. They must be doing really well, when in reality, they have more than you, but they also owe way more than you, which means that they're more likely to be gone sooner than you. Which puts you, if you've been watching this channel and learning stuff and, you kind of want to get into repair, and maybe if you lost your job, and this may actually be a good time to get into this as a business as the more mid-sized companies leave. And when I say this, I'm fully acknowledging myself now as a mid-sized business. We've got about 13 employees. We have weekly company meetings. We have a 2,400 square foot store. I don't see Asset Genie going out of business as a result of this. I don't see CPR leaving as a result of this. Nor do I see the guy that advertises on Craigslist, who's about $100 cheaper than us in the area, who does all the work out of his apartment, leaving the business or going under from this. But I do see the repair shops that have 8 or 9 or 10 employees going under as a result of this. If they close and they still have to pay all their bills throughout that time, and that is then either reimbursed by payroll tax credits, where it's like, pay 6 figures now, get reimbursed 6 to 12 months down the road, they're gone. If this is something where they're going to be reimbursed via a loan, but that loan has to be paid back in full, even though they have to pay the expenses for the several weeks that they were out of work, that simply means that you're postponing them being gone, especially if they're forced to keep the entire staff that they had before in order to get the loan. So business is going to do this. They just had this crater in income where the expenses didn't stop, but they have a loan that they have to pay back. So now you're just taking the mid-sized company going out of business, and rather than it happening now, it happened 6 months from now. But I see immense opportunity for people who started the same way that I started to shine at this point in time. Don't see the fact that you don't have a lot of money as a weakness. Rather, see the fact that you don't have 5, 6, or 7-figure liabilities as a strength. And I know this sounds weird. I know it sounds perverse that I'm kind of speaking about the virtue of being broke. But as someone who experienced it, even if you are broke, even if you are like me and you had 268 or 500 or 600 to your name, when my only expense, the only expense that I had as a business was not $17,000 in payroll or 12 to 13 in rent or thousands in insurance and everything else, when my only expense was $400 a month for a shitty, rundown, crappy place to live that was infested with termites, and the $100 or so a month that I was using for a food budget, I had a lot of freedom, and dare I say it, I had more freedom than I have now, because I didn't have to worry as much about whether or not I had to take a week or 2 weeks off, or whether or not business took a downturn the same way that I do now. And I'm hoping that people out there that are watching that are thinking, oh my God, the world is ending, the world is ending, the world is ending. I'm not saying that we're in a great place right now, but what I am saying is that there are certain opportunities available. And I'm trying to get people to view just a small little light at the end of the tunnel if they are right now where I was in 2008 during the last recession. That there is going to be opportunity to be found in the restructuring of the economy that is going to occur as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. And that is going to be that there are going to be shoes to fill from businesses that fall by the wayside, and that it may be your job to fill those shoes. In addition to the fact that typically the question that every customer has when they walk in the door is this worth fixing versus getting a new one? And the delta that they're willing to tolerate between fixing and getting a new one goes down tremendously in a recession. If fixing it is $200, replacing it is $800 in a booming economy. Maybe if they have an older one, they'll just get a new one. In an economy, maybe they'll only buy a new one if the fix is $200 and the new one's $600. But in this economy, if buying a new one is $250 and fixing the old one is $225, you'd be surprised how many people are just going to bite the bullet, get it fixed, pay the $225, and deal with the scuff on the front camera lens. Repair is going to be a profession that I think is always going to be around, but it is going to change in several ways. There's no way that we're going to be coming out of what's going on with the economy right now with no changes. Those changes are going to affect multiple industries, and they're particularly going to affect people in our industry. We have businesses of all sizes in our industry, and I think that this is a great time right now for people who are where I was 12 years ago to think about getting started. And if you've been laid off, if you've got some unemployment insurance, and you're not really sure what you're going to do next, I don't know. Just think about it. Think it over. I thought it was ridiculous. I remember when I told my dad I just lost my job, and I was hoping that I'd be able to finish this project for this musician using a MacBook, but I think I'd be better off actually selling this. I wonder if I could make money doing this. My dad looks at me and says, come on, I don't know about that. And I said, let me try it. Maybe I could turn this into a job. And he's like, nah, listen, don't get too excited. You know, I didn't get too excited, but it did turn into something. May turn into something for you as well. I'm not selling it. I'm not trying to sell you something. I'm not trying to sell you a kit, a welcome kit on how to get started in repair or anything like that. Every video on this channel, all free. Maybe you take a little bit of time, dig in, watch. If you watch it on Vimeo, they're ad-free. Vimeo.com/Rossman Group. They never take down my shit for privacy complaints either. There's going to be a lot of bumps in the road for businesses of all sizes, and there's going to be a lot of obstacles in our way to remaining a viable business over the next several months. However, there's one person that's given me the inspiration and the motivation to go above and beyond to ensure that our business remains profitable, viable, and useful to society during this time and for the next 2 years. One person who's the driving force behind everything that I do to ensure that in 2022, come January, we are still a business. My friend, Eli, the computer guy.
I'm saying, Lewis. I'm saying. I mean, like, if you go bankrupt, bring a smile to my face. I'm not gonna lie. I would laugh. I'll come buy you a beer. I'll come up with the Acela. I'll fly business class up. See you. I'll buy you a beer when you go bankrupt. But I'm just saying, like, he repairs equipment. He repairs equipment for a company he pretty much hates. That company pretty much hates him. Not only does that company pretty much hate him, but that company pretty much wants anybody like him to no longer exist. Just like that. Just gonna put that right there. Just gotta put that right there. You can take a look at that. It's gonna. I'm saying, Lewis. I'm saying. I mean, like, if you go bankrupt, bring a smile to my face. I'm not gonna lie. I would laugh. I'll come buy you a beer. I'll come up with the Acela. I'll fly business class up. See you. I'll buy you a beer when you go bankrupt. But I'm just saying, like, let's think about it. I'm growing. I remember when I was growing. I remember when I had a company that I called the Bottle Rocket Business Model. I remember when I was doubling. Every 60 to 90 days. Right up till we hit the fucking wall in Mach 3. Going Mach 3 as an entrepreneur is an amazing feeling. What's not amazing is hitting the wall at Mach 3. When you hit the wall at Mach 3, it's just its own kind of fun, if you know what I'm saying. Anyway, that's like that.
This is not the end of our bet, Eli. This is simply double or nothing. In January of 2022, I am going to go down to Maryland and deliver you a pink, foam at the end of it, grape microphone that you're going to be wearing for every single one of your YouTube live streams. That's it for today. And as always, I hope you learned something.